Okay, should we? Okay. Good morning. So, this is the paper that doesn't have exactly the high-tech thing in it. I didn't use AI. I did not use any kind of fintech tool or anything like that. But I think that this paper is about the limitation of creation of the new financial products. And if we try to do that, we still have to remember that there are assumptions in finance that are lingering in the background. But if we are forgetting about them, the products start having a problem. Okay. That's a very general statement. What I'm talking about, this paper is about a particular object called target date funds. Okay? And target date funds was a product that was created for the people who don't know what finance is, who don't understand it, who don't want to spend any time understanding it. Now, the idea is that you invest once, and then once you are becoming older, the product is automatically rebalanced. There is a very good theory behind it. Okay? So again, you should have a mixture of a tangency portfolio and risk-free asset, and depending on your age or risk aversion, you should be somewhere on this line. If you are young, like our students here, we should be here, or maybe even here. If you're getting older, you should go somewhere around this point, right? The first target date funds were created about year 2000. They were a reasonably small asset class. Actually, as asset class, they were part of balanced funds universe. But then, in its infinite wisdom, in 2006, United States Congress adopted the law that states that pension plan might dedicate qualified default investment alternative. What does it mean? If you start working for a company, and the company has 401b or 403k or whatever other kind of plan, and if you don't choose where to invest, your money automatically go into what is called QDIA, Qualified Default Investment Alternative. And it just so happens that target date funds happen to be one of those options on the list, and they were the most beneficial. Okay, that's what happened. So basically, in no time, target date funds move from basically zero to about $1.2 trillion. Mind you, this is only the Morningstar universe. The real number that is invested in target date fund-like products is probably 2 to 2.5 times more. So you're really talking about $2 to $3 trillion problem. I don't know about you, but trillion there, trillion here, sooner or later you start really talk about real money, right? So, how big are they? Now, there is a long list of the things, but let me just say this. 55% of pension plan participants in 2019 invested their entire portfolio in the single target date fund. So roughly half of the people invest only in them. Okay? Now, here is another kicker. 36% knows that target date funds are not providing guaranteed return. Everybody else think that they might provide you actually guaranteed return. So basically they think that you are talking about bond-like instrument. What can you do? Now, the government tries to do many things to make target date funds more accessible, transparent, but then this is a basic conundrum. How can you make people read something when they don't want to read it? Okay? So here you have a product where investors don't monitor. Okay? As a reminder, in finance in general, there is a thing called Wall Street walk. If you don't like this particular company, investment, whatever, or fund, you just sell it and you invest somewhere else, right? Now, flow performance sensitivity is kind of a measure of this. So basically, for the normal funds, the inflows for the best funds go up. It's true that outflow side is also there. But this is what it is, those two lines are for target date funds. They're basically flat. Your target date funds does well or it doesn't do well. There is no disciplining device, right? Now, the problem is particularly acute for younger people. So if you're going to look, so basically, this is target horizon. So basically, 0 are old people, 50 are young people. 50 is 50 years to retirement. Okay? So basically, there is some flow performance sensitivity for older folks, but nothing for younger folks. So investors don't monitor. Who does? Maybe those should be the plan participants, the plan sponsors. You know, every pension plan has a board. It is populated by HR people, some union people, this sort of people. How much do they understand finance? Not really. And here's the real problem. In any other type of funds, you have very well-defined benchmark. You have S&P funds that would be measured against S&P. You would have European blue chips companies measured against, say, Stocks 50. Now, what is the measure for target date funds? Here is what the problem is. This is what is called the glide path. So, what is the way through which you're going to go from tangency portfolio to basically risk-free asset with age? And those are all different companies. Which one of them is correct? I don't know. But here's what I know. AllianceBernstein is an equity shop. And you see that they are here very high, and then they continue to be very high, well above after retirement. So at retirement, they are like 70–75% in equity. Okay? And if you are happy to live till 95, you are still going to be 33% in equity, 35% in equity. This is for bond. PIMCO is a bond shop. You see, you start going down reasonably early, and by retirement you are 20% in equity only. It's a very misleading in reality, because what PIMCO does is investing in kind of junk bond funds and things like that. So there is an equity exposure that is really much higher there. But, you know, it still tells you something. Okay? Now, put yourself in a place of somebody who is a pension plan sponsor. How can you even argue with it? And even if you can, those are two similar ones for two different funds. And they're almost the same, right? But the amount of risk that is embedded in each one of them is very different. One is over-investing in international and small stocks, and another one is investing more in blue chips kind of things. It's very different beta, right? Among other things. And here's the real kicker. This is how the typical target date fund looks like from inside. It is basically fund of funds. Okay? Now, if you're going to go back to this picture, you see that significant volume of the funds is investing in its own family funds. So Fidelity would invest in their own, Vanguard invest in their own, T. Rowe invest in their own. Now, more than 80% are investing in actively managed underlying funds. That's a problem. Or at least that already shows you that it might be a problem. Okay, how well do they do? Okay, let's look at the example. This is a particular T. Rowe example. So what you see here is a particular point in time, 2065, and I'm only having 3 different funds. Don't forget, the theory basically says it's a combination of risk-free asset and tangency portfolio. So the portfolio, the risky portfolio, should be the same, at least that theory says, for 2065 or 2030. It's only the proportions should be different. Okay, look at this, 2065. Value, 21%. The pure S&P index, 10%. Growth, 20%. I'm yet to find asset pricing theory that could give me a portfolio composition of this sort. And if you're going to look at 2005, basically people in retirement, it's basically value and index and not growth. I probably forgot to mention that growth is the most expensive fund out of the whole group. Okay, so, and again, the deviation from this tangency portfolio, okay, is very significant. Now, each family, for each kind of fund, they have a range of other funds. If you're talking about S&P funds, each family have couple. 2, 3, 5. You're talking about Fidelity, probably 10 to 15. So what is this? This is a choice. You are making a choice between different funds within the family. Okay? And here are 2 measures of how bad the funds are. It's either, you know, the negative alpha, or it's dummy if alpha is less than 1%. So what it basically says is that you are choosing funds that are not good to begin with. And then you're actually doing it more for long-term funds. The ones where people don't monitor. Okay?
Can it be that they choose just funds with the highest fees?
We're going to go to that. But don't forget, there are different classes, right? So, and normally the structure, the cost structure of different funds is grossly overlapping, right? But we're going to go there.
Excuse me.
Yeah.
You're only measuring downside performance here, so how do you know that TDFs aren't just picking higher tracking error funds, where the funds take more active risks, so there's also more positive performance as well as there being more negative performance?
You're going to come to that. Okay? Just in a moment. What I want to show that this effect started after 2008. Again, where all those people who don't monitor start entering into the picture. Okay, and this is answering your question. So basically what it says is for each year, the target date funds are having 2.9 bips of underperformance. So if you are 50 years, it's basically 145 basis points. So you underperform, risk adjusted. This is alpha. And I can give you technical details. It's alpha that we got on weekly data, blah, blah, blah. But just trust me, this is reasonably good measure. And again, the whole problem is post-2008. All right? So it is underperformance. Gross, net. Here is other measure. And again, we can go through different measures and things like that. But let me just talk about this one. In this one, what we did is, let's take equity and let's have fixed income. And let's use the same glide path that is used by a given fund. But instead of the funds that they are putting in, we are putting Vanguard funds. Okay? So again, there is certain transaction cost in being in financial markets. Again, what we see here is there is basically 27, 25 bips underperformance there. And that basically comes out of choosing bad actively managed funds. Yes?
I have a quick question. When you talk about performance, are you talking about in terms of returns or sharper issues?
This would be the difference between, okay, so this is alpha. This is alpha. This is the difference between the return of the fund and return of synthetic funds that have the same ratio of debt to equity. But instead of real funds, you substitute Vanguard index funds in both categories. And again, you can argue which funds need to be substituted. We try a couple of different things. It's basically all the same. So, okay. Then another thing I want to point out is that this problem is grossly exaggerated if the funds in the family have outflows, other funds in the family. So basically what is going on? Some fund underperform. Investors are getting out. What are we going to do? We're going to plug them into target date fund. So, and that explains basically half of underperformance. Okay. And again, effect is basically post-2008. Actively managed funds, again, went very much higher after that. Let me not talk about that. Let me not talk about, well, basically what it says. Look, underperformance is real. Now, back to fees. Somebody was asking me about fees. So, this is fund of funds, right? So, there are two layers of fees. There is a first layer that is headline, that is printed in a prospectus, and it's true on average, it's fairly low. It's 42 bips. It's a respectable number. You can argue, but it is a respectable number. But there is a second layer of fees. Those are fees of the underlying funds that you invest into. And on average is 50, median is 53. So if you add those numbers together, basically all the claims on the fact that target date funds are kind of cheap, they just evaporate, they disappear. Okay? Now, that basically just says that our calculation is the same as calculation Morningstar does, and actually we are pretty close to what numbers they're getting. And there is a particular reason we had a disagreement with Morningstar about this, and they said that somebody said in Morningstar that target date funds don't have second layer of fees, and it's like, okay, this is your document. And this is actually, again, this is the size of hidden fees. And what you see here is that there are two effects. One is the base effect, and this is just the effect of horizon. You tend to put more expensive funds in target date funds to begin with. But then there is also about a third effect that is coming out of using of active funds. So think about it like that. Basically, 2/3 of the effect are coming out of just choosing expensive funds to begin with. And then active funds have an additional, like, 1/3 of the kick. Okay. Here is the funny thing. Again, each, or practically each, Vanguard is now very different, but family have A, B, C, D different classes. Okay? So in each given moment of time, target date funds can invest in each one of those, right? Which one would they choose? The assumption is that they should choose the least expensive one. The reality is, in about 37% of the cases, even if the cheapest is available, more expensive is chosen. Okay? So, what did we learn out of all this exercise? I mean, there are a couple of things. First, there are no miracles. There are no Santa Claus. If you create an asset class that is built under the assumption that there is going to be no monitoring, and you expect this class to perform, not gonna work. Agency kills that. You can, of course, pray for the goodness of humans, but that's just a prayer, you know. It really doesn't work. What is needed? I can give you my personal opinion. There are a number of situations, including, I still have some pension savings from my years in Sweden. And then, you know, if you're going also look, there is a target date fund that is actually ran as part of the pension system of US Army. It's also very much predefined glide path. And those are invested in very cheap index alternatives. You know exactly how to measure performance. You know exactly what the, you know, average performance over time is going to be. That's number one. Number two, the fact that the families are choosing to have closed architecture is already very problematic. There is a very low chances that the small family like American, or, well, I mean, they're not exactly small, but, you know, they're not rival to Fidelity, that, you know, they're going to have the best fund in every category. So actually, that's probably what tells you that it should be open-end architecture. Then what should be QDA? Because there are other options. There is an option of balance funds, which probably not a good option. And there is option of managed accounts. And somehow managed accounts 15 to 20 years ago were very expensive. Now, with robo-advising and everything, I think those costs went down substantially. And actually managed accounts can become an issue. And that's also showed you the limits of liberal paternalism and nudging and all those other hot behavioral things that we are trying to do. You can do it only if the choices that you are giving to people are very well thought through, including all the possible pitfalls. And in economics in general, there is always a law of unintended consequences. And we are basically living in this universe. Okay, thank you so much. Yeah.
It's more like a comment. I think that your analysis can benefit if you also consider performance measure Sharpe ratio, because many investors, particularly aging investors, would be willing to sacrifice with returns in order to be exposed to lower volatility.
Okay. I see what you're saying, but look at this. At 65, according to most of the families, you're supposed to be at least 50% in equity. This is great. Here, it's more like 40. By the way, this is 2013. 2014-15, most of the families moved up. So suddenly, people are taking more risk. But here's a real problem. You think that they have a choice, and this is active choice. Those are people who did not make a choice. They were put there. Okay? So, if you remember a cartoon, here's your spinach. I don't like spinach. You're gonna eat it whether you like it or not. And this is 55% of investors. They're going to eat it whether they like it or not. I don't like spinach. But
so why has there not been a class action lawsuit by investors against the fund management companies?
again, what is a benchmark? Try to prove that this is a benchmark that you underperform with respect to.
No, but you can show that they choose their own funds to buy, and this doesn't provide the best advice for the clients. It's obvious that they buy their own funds.
Somehow, pension plans don't do that. And again, the choice of this QDIA is like, the very last decisions that people are making. They can argue very hard for extra 5 bips on the fees of a particular fund that 5% of investors invest into, but then they would never care about those. And again, since people who invest in those funds did not make active choice, they just have to eat the spinach. That's pretty much it.
Why won't Vanguard offer a passive fund based on Vanguard funds? And
Vanguard does it. And actually, after we did the first version of this paper, what they actually did, Vanguard was very smart. They unified all the asset classes. And now, look, Vanguard is still underperforming, but they are underperforming around 8 bips. 8 bips. It's nothing. Okay, so But there is another question. Why everybody else is not doing like Vanguard?
There are not many vanguards.
Okay. Wow. All right.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.